Right. And then it's really to me it's really and I take a step back when I like say, hey, first you got to assess whether you even need rice or not,
Sure.
right? Like if you're sedentary and you're not doing a ton of anaerobic training, your carbohydrates in your diet need to be a little bit lower, so you probably don't even need any rice, right?
Sure.
You're going to emphasize more the fruits and the vegetables and things like that. But if you're doing, severe glycogen depleting training, well, you need some starch. And the reason you need starch is not for, vitamins or minerals. You're going to get that from your fruits and your vegetables.
Right.
Also, you're going to get fiber from that too. Really, the only reason you're eating starch is to get glucose. So the idea is to get that glucose without any of the toxic compounds that can come along with a lot of cereal grains. Your insulin sensitivity is higher, so you can handle starch, no problem there. So even if it's higher on the glycemic index, doesn't really matter. And in that case, that's where I'm saying, well, first assess whether you need rice or not, and if
Sure.
you do, go for the white rice instead of the brown rice.
Absolutely. Yeah, and another thing just to kind of notice how it's pure glucose. So it's easily used by your body for the anaerobic activity. Maybe give us a spectrum on glucose versus fructose, Nate.
Yeah, and that's where
We're having some fun. I get to grill
oh,
him.
I fucking love it, man. This is great. We're getting topics where people really get confused, and that's to me that's why people really get confused about carbohydrates. There's just
Sure.
so many technical details about it, but I really think that's the reason why carbohydrate diets get a bad name in the first place is that like 50% of the American diet is basically sugars.
Right.
So of course any diet that's compared to that is going to look like a savior or a superstar. So low carb diets come off looking as the absolute best approach, and they are for certain demographics. Like I said, if you're sedentary. But yeah, you get into technical details like you look at the research, like fructose in concentrated amounts is what causes all the problems, like insulin resistance, a risk factor for type 2 diabetes. So with the refined food industry putting sugar in everything, that's why people really run into problems with carb-based diets. If you switch that to basically pure glucose or starch-based diets, which are just chains of glucose linked together, handle glucose very well and use it if it's highly active. And what I always tell people is, again, go back to those simple templates. If you compared an American diet, traditional American diet, which is again 50% refined sugars, which is a ton of fructose, versus say a Japanese diet, well, now you have a completely different story, which is very low in fructose and high in starch, like we said, rice and potatoes. Well, you look at some of the research pre 1991, before food refining came in there as well. Diabetes and obesity rates were both less than 2% of the population. So what you have now is a completely different story. Is that, hey, if carbs in general were the problem for people, the Japanese would be the fattest, most diabetic people
Right.
on the planet, which
Right.
is not the case, right? It's the type of carbs that matter. So that's why you said, what do I start with first? It's always emphasizing food choices first, because then you start to see, well, wow, I can eat some carbs in my diet and I'm not getting fat and I'm not getting, pre-diabetic and insulin resistant. It's really cutting out some of the poor food choices that are causing these problems.
Sure. Yeah, and a quick little side note that's important to note is like the reason why glucose is so important is because it's readily available in your muscles and you can use it instantly, whereas fructose can't be used by the muscles. And so then it really
That's
becomes
correct. Yes.
challenging. Right. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So fructose is metabolized in the liver.
Yeah.
Primarily stored as liver glycogen. So it's very limited storage. So
Sure.
once those are full, it easily gets converted to body fat. Whereas glucose can be used by any tissue in the body. So, it's including muscles, which muscle glycogen stores are a lot larger than liver glycogen stores. So what you're getting is for an anaerobic athlete, it's just a better fuel source to emphasize the glucose and the starch versus the fructose.
Well, hot damn, Nate, we're dropping some truth bombs, huh?
Damn, fun stuff, man. Hey, what are you gonna do? I love it. We talk forever about this stuff, man.
All right, let's break down one more component of food choices. There's a lot of people talking about gluten. This shit. All right, tell us a little bit about gluten. Should everybody avoid it? Is it something that we should all be thinking about? Tell me more about that.
Yeah, I mean, my personal approach is I've seen enough of some of the disaster gluten
Right.
can cause, and,
Sure.
and some people who are allergic to it. that yeah, I just tend to recommend cutting it out. But I also am very much with all again all these people coming off as gurus and know-it-alls, like with food choices that are a little more controversial. My honest advice is to test it out and assess it in the
Sure.
real world, because that's where you're going to find the results for you, not what some coaches saying or something like that. It's always more important to test it out in the real world. And see if it works best. I know competitors who eat a ton of gluten in their diets and they're fine and they're great and they do well with it. Personally, me, I don't do well. I mean, I just I just had a meal the other day, a cheat meal, and it had some cookies and breads and gluten. And man, I was on the toilet the next day all day, and so I just don't do well with it personally. So
Yeah.
I think there is enough information out there that even if you're not allergic to it, some people are very sensitive to it, right? So you talk to, say, someone with higher level goals and they're a competitor, and they're like, man, just can't lose this last 5 pounds, and I'm feeling a little bloated and water weight. It's like, well, try eating rice instead of wheat bread and see if that, fixes it. And for some it has. So it really just depends on the individual.
Sure.
But my honest advice with any controversial food choice, dairy is another one that
Sure.
some people do really well on it, some people don't, is to test it out, cut it out for 2 weeks, see and look how you feel, add it back in, see how you look and feel, and you'll have your answer for you.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's a great approach to do it. So just cut it out, and if it works for you, when you bring it back in, then fine. If it doesn't, then you'll know, right?
Yeah, exactly, man. It's kind of just getting back to some simple common sense in this information overload era. It's like you got it.
Well, the other thing, Nate, is that I feel like people want a guru. They want someone to tell them what they need to do. They don't want to take personal responsibility for themselves and say, okay, I've listened to what Nate has to say, what Tyler has to say. Now I'm going to see if that works for me. And if it does,
Yeah,
then I'll stick with it. If it doesn't, then I'm going to go find somebody else to listen to. And
right.
I think that's just a huge problem, is that people aren't taking personal responsibility for their own health, for their own fitness, and they're looking outside of themselves for a guru that's going to help them. And, with so much information these days, they're choosing Nate, and then Tyler, and then this guy, and then this guy, and this guy, and this guy, and they end up doing nothing, right? They get paralysis
Yeah.
analysis. How do you fix that with your clients? How do you get people focused?
Yeah, well, I'm also big into philosophy, not to bore the shit out of people, but
Right.
you like Bruce Lee, Miyamoto Musashi, warrior philosophy, and both of them came to the same conclusion. Like Bruce Lee's line is, there's no help but self-help.
Right.
And then Musashi's was kind of like, there's nothing outside of yourself that can make you stronger, faster, smarter. It's all within. So
Happier.
it's all. What's
I
that?
said happier.
Yeah. So it's all kind of it's called kind of the idea, like you're saying, is people need to take some personal accountability. And one of the things too I always do when I'm working with people, I always say, hey, what are you fighting for? Why are you doing this? Is it really to get a six pack, or is it to be healthier so you can play with your kids? Is it to be a more cognitively functional at work and a high cognitive performance at work so you can crush the competition, that type of thing? You usually, other than like a vain meathead like myself, the sort of six pack goals are not enough. People need to really think about why they're doing this. And the flip side of that is when you meet someone whose doctor has laid it out for them and basically like, listen, you're going to die if you don't change your life. All of a sudden, all those diets that failed in the past all start working because they have the right motivation now, right? So really, it's to me, it's diving in a little deeper and saying, hey, what are you really fighting for? And then once you figure that out for people, once you get their real goals, then all of a sudden they're way more likely to take personal accountability, and then their adherence rates go up and their results skyrocket because of that. I also think we're in an age in our industry where there's a lot of coaches out there that are purposely confusing people to make them codependent on their services or whatever. And I think you got to watch out for that. Like I said, be careful who you're learning from, because I know personally some coaches who are purposely like holding back information or confusing people just to get them codependent on them, and that's not a good thing. I hope you learn from me and then go off and live a great life and get all these results that you want, and I can go out and do something different then too.
Right. Yeah, I think the best coaches are the ones that look forward to the day where they can get rid of you. knowing that you
Yeah.
understand the concept rather than you depend on them for continued motivation and support and education.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you're always going to need that, continued support and new research comes out and stuff. But there's a difference between that and providing ongoing support versus like purposely like making people codependent on you.
Yeah.
And I think there's a big difference
That's
there.
pretty
And so,
dark.
yeah, dude, it's crazy. And I get it. And it makes me, honestly, it makes me skeptical when I'm trying to learn about things in other industries because I'm like, I see how people twist it and like when I'm going to learn, say, about business or finance, I'm like, fuck, is someone just like scamming me here? You know what I mean? So be careful about who you learn from.
Yeah.
And like I said, you can do a little research and find out, about people. So
Yeah. I'm happy you mentioned that deeper why. I have a really interesting story that I share sometimes, which was I used to spend some time training trainers how to train people better. And one of them was asking me about, I was teaching them about whys, how to get people's whys. And I asked her her goal. She wanted to be able to do a one-legged squat. And I kept digging deeper with more whys. Why do you want to be able to do a one-legged squat? What does that serve as a purpose to you? Well, that means to have strong legs. Well, why do you want to have strong legs? Well, I want to have strong legs so I can run faster. Well, why do you want to run faster? Well, I really just want to run a marathon. Well, why do you want to run a marathon? Well, I want to run a marathon so I can do it with my dad because he runs marathons. Well, why do you want to run a marathon with your dad? Because I want to do something fun with my dad. I want to spend more time and foster our relationship. It's like, oh my God, the reason why you want to be able to do a pistol is because you want to have a better relationship with your dad. Not because you want to be able to do a pistol, So let's go ahead and fix that root problem over here, and then we'll come back to the leg strength and everything. So
yeah, and actually, I think it's a very critical step people overlook, right? Because like I said, that's why so many plans, and because they're shitty plans too, but they're so many plans fail because people are doing it for the wrong reason, and then as motivation declines, they give up, things like that. It really is, like I said, it's rarely what you think it is when you dive deeper. It's rarely that superficial goal. There's something deeper there, and then once you find what it is, you won't have a quick fix anymore. You'll have a lifestyle, and there'll be no starting and stopping over. You'll have a lifestyle. Of course, you'll get better and you'll go through different phases, but you'll have a sustainable lifestyle plan when you find that, not a series of quick fixes.
yeah, that's great. Well, man, we are chatting it up, and we're running out of time fast. So I want to make sure to dig into some more useful info for everybody.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
we've talked about food choices. We've talked about the difference between carbohydrates. Hope we cleared up some thoughts in some people's heads. A little bit about macronutrients there. One of the things that you've been talking about, and a lot of people are talking about these days, intermittent fasting. So Nate, break it down to us. Why is intermittent fasting useful? Maybe when is intermittent fasting not useful? And how do people know the difference?